Wednesday afternoon was nothing short of hell for David Jenkins. An anonymous email tip had shattered his world, alleging that his beloved wife of 6 years, Lauren, had been spotted entering a room at a cheap motel with another man. The news was a devastating blow to David, who believed their marriage was built on love and trust. Arriving home around 6 p.m., David found Lauren in the kitchen, seemingly unfazed by the events of the day. As they exchanged greetings, David couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal and suspicion gnawing at him. Lauren mentioned his upcoming trip to Greensboro on Friday, unaware that David had fabricated the entire story to set up surveillance on her. Her casual demeanor only fueled David's doubts and fears. When Lauren suggested he call her from Greensboro to coordinate dinner plans, David couldn't help but wonder if it was a ploy to cover her tracks. His trust in her was shattered, and every word she spoke seemed tinged with deception. Reluctantly, David agreed to call her, but his mind was consumed by doubt and suspicion. The once solid foundation of their marriage now felt fragile and uncertain. As he prepared for his fake business trip, David couldn't escape the sinking feeling that his world was falling apart. David felt a sense of unease as he observed Lauren's behavior. Her request for him to keep an eye on dinner while she took a shower seemed innocent enough, but David's mind was racing with doubts and suspicions. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As they sat down for dinner, David's thoughts were consumed by the anonymous email he had received earlier in the day. Despite Lauren's attempts to engage him in conversation, David found it difficult to focus. He felt like his entire world was unraveling before his eyes. As the evening progressed, David struggled to maintain a sense of normalcy. He couldn't shake the nagging feeling that his marriage was in jeopardy. Even the simplest gestures from Lauren seemed tinged with uncertainty. When Lauren suggested they spend some intimate time together before bed, David's heart sank. He knew he had to stick to his plan and maintain his composure, despite the turmoil raging inside him. With a heavy heart, David declined Lauren's offer, citing his preoccupation with work. He couldn't believe how quickly his life had been turned upside down by a single email. The uncertainty of the situation weighed heavily on him, leaving him feeling helpless and lost. Lauren's affectionate gesture before bed left David feeling a mix of relief and confusion. He couldn't shake the feeling that her comment about being up to it was a subtle jab at him, adding to his already mounting frustration. The next morning, David left for work before Lauren woke up, avoiding any further uncomfortable conversations. He realized he was struggling to handle the perceived scrutiny from Lauren, whether real or imagined. The previous night had felt like something out of Poe's The Telltale Heart, and David knew he needed to keep his distance from Lauren to avoid another tense encounter. Throughout the day, David's mind was consumed with thoughts of his marriage and the possibility of infidelity. Despite lacking concrete evidence, he felt compelled to investigate further. He arranged a meeting with a lawyer and explored options for discreetly monitoring Lauren's activities. Arriving home late, David pretended to focus on work while secretly planning his next steps. Lauren greeted him warmly, but David couldn't shake the feeling of unease that hung over their interactions. The following day, David planted a recording device in Lauren's purse before heading out. Meeting with the lawyer provided valuable insights into the potential consequences of divorce, but David couldn't shake the sense of despair that clouded his thoughts. The reality of their situation hit him hard, challenging his belief in their once-promised forever. During his lunch break at Starbucks, David delved into the complexities of divorce, scouring the internet for insights into detecting infidelity and the reasons behind marital betrayal. Despite his research, nothing resonated with Lauren's character, leading David to doubt the validity of the accusations against her. Their bond seemed too strong for such betrayal to occur. Feeling overwhelmed by the topic, David left the cafe and headed towards the motel mentioned in the anonymous email. The passage of time felt sluggish as he approached the moment of truth. However, as he arrived at the motel, doubts crept in. What if this was the wrong place, or if Lauren used different motels? Parking at a distance, David waited anxiously, observing the motel's comings and goings. When he spotted a familiar-looking man parking an Acura and entering a room, followed by Lauren arriving in her Honda Accord, his worst fears were confirmed. Watching her enter the room with another man shattered David's world. Frustration and disbelief flooded David as he grappled with the reality of his crumbling marriage. He felt blindsided by Lauren's betrayal, unable to comprehend why she would jeopardize their relationship. The once meticulous planner now found himself navigating uncharted emotional territory, his thoughts spinning like a roller coaster in turmoil. Realizing that lurking around the motel wouldn't provide much more insight, David opted against confronting Lauren and her lover. He needed space to process his emotions and plan his next steps. Remembering the pen he had planted in her purse, he captured evidence of the affair with photos and the man's license plate before driving away aimlessly. Sitting in a brewery taproom, David grappled with the reality of his situation. He had evidence to confront Lauren, but he still lacked crucial details about the affair. Waiting to retrieve the pen from her purse, he contemplated his next move, knowing he couldn't engage intimately with Lauren until he had more clarity. Crafting a plan in his mind, David decided to disrupt Lauren's expectations by calling her with fake news of his early return. With a cheerful voice, he left a voicemail, hoping to catch her off guard and gain more time to gather evidence and assess his feelings. "I hope that shakes her up," David muttered to himself as he headed home. Packing a few bags and leaving a note for Lauren, he wanted the option to leave without a full confrontation until he knew the contents of the recording. His call had interrupted Lauren and her lover, Rob, during their final rendezvous. Despite their initial panic, they parted ways smoothly, with Rob heading to the gym and Lauren rushing home. Anxious about David's unexpected early return, Lauren worried about his cheerful demeanor and the possibility of intimacy after his absence all week. As she pulled into the driveway and saw David's car, she contemplated preemptively suggesting a celebratory dinner out. Inside, David waited nervously, preparing himself to confront Lauren about her infidelity. When she arrived, he greeted her with a forced smile, unsure of how to proceed. Despite his turmoil, Lauren greeted him warmly and suggested they go out to eat to celebrate, unaware of the storm brewing within David. "That sounds like a plan since I got home early. Why don't you go upstairs and change, and I'll make a reservation somewhere?" David suggested. Lauren agreed and placed her work bag and purse on the table before heading upstairs. David waited until he heard the shower start, then retrieved the pen from her purse. After playing back a snippet of the lovers' conversation, he turned it off. "Well, that confirms it. Time to go," David muttered, leaving his note for Lauren on the table near her bags. Pausing at the door, he glanced back at their home, realizing that things would never be the same between them. Meanwhile, Lauren rushed through her shower, focusing on freshening up. She quickly dressed and headed downstairs, expecting a casual dinner together. Not finding David in the living room, she noticed the note on the table and picked it up. As she read it, shock washed over her. "Lauren, I know about your affair. Your actions have shattered me, and I need some time away to process everything. I will contact you when I'm ready to talk. Please respect my space. David." David drove to his hotel, settling in before listening to the recording of Lauren's betrayal. As he played it back, he heard the conversation unfold. "Lauren, hi Rob. I can't believe we've completed everything so quickly. It feels like we've been planning forever." "Rob, I agree. Good planning pays off. The stress of hiding this affair is getting to me." "Lauren, I'm relieved it's over. Long-term affairs are risky." "Rob, since David's out of town, how about we celebrate with a two-fair today?" "Lauren, that's a cheesy line, Rob. But I'm up for it. Just remember the rules." David listened to their intimate moments, realizing the depth of Lauren's betrayal. David listened to the entire 90 minutes of Lauren and Rob's illicit encounter. Two things stood out to him. First, the intimacy seemed mundane, leaving him puzzled as to why Lauren would jeopardize their marriage for something so ordinary. Second, neither of them spoke negatively about their spouses, leaving David with no clear understanding of the motive behind the affair. Friday night brought little sleep for both David and Lauren. Eventually, David gave up on the recording, realizing there was nothing more to glean from it. Deciding to utilize the weekend and his break from work, he texted Lauren, "I'll come by the house at 11 a.m. to talk, if that works for you." Lauren's heart raced as she received the text notification. "Yes. Please come home. I'm so sorry I hurt you." "See you then," David replied, without acknowledging her apology. Arriving just before 11 a.m., David rang the doorbell, prompting Lauren's surprise. "David, you don't have to ring the bell to your own house." "I wasn't sure if it was appropriate to just walk in," David explained. "Shall we sit at the kitchen table and discuss our next steps?" Lauren sensed David's serious tone and the direction the conversation was taking, which unsettled her. As they sat across from each other, time seemed to stand still until David broke the silence with a question that struck at the heart of the matter. "Do you deny the facts of what I've learned about your involvement with Rob?" Tears welled up in Lauren's eyes as she grappled with David's inquiry and the weight it carried. In her mind, she needed to convey that her actions didn't change her feelings for him and that the affair was merely a misguided attempt to prove a point to their colleagues. David was unaware of the deeper conversations at Lauren's workplace that led to her and Rob's ill-fated experiment. "David, before we continue, you need to understand that Rob and I embarked on this to prove a point. Months ago, our colleagues debated whether affairs could be kept secret, and we found ourselves on the side believing it was possible with careful planning and discretion. It wasn't about desire or intention to hurt you." Yes, essentially, that's the gist of it. What started as mere conversation turned into a sort of game for us. We discussed hypothetical scenarios over lunches, and it evolved into a detailed plan that we were convinced we could execute. The challenge was to ensure absolute secrecy. We knew Rob loved his wife as much as I love you, and our experiment didn't affect our commitment to our spouses. It was purely about sex. One condition was that the affair had to last at least 30 days with 5 meetings. But, David, it was just physical. We don't have any romantic feelings for each other, only for our partners. We made sure not to do anything we wouldn't with our spouses. What do you mean it didn't affect me? I used to have a faithful wife, and now I don't. Yes, I understand your perspective now that you know. But if you hadn't found out, you would still believe I was faithful. In my mind, it was meaningless. And even after being with Rob, I never turned you down for sex. Sloppy seconds and no harm done, huh? I feel fantastic now. I know you're hurt, and I regret causing you pain. But I hope sharing these details helps you understand that my love for you remains unchanged. Rob was just a colleague, and our encounters meant nothing beyond physical gratification. Knowing about it changes everything. We never intended to harm our marriages. So, essentially, you're admitting to cheating on me for a month, having sex with another man, and planning to keep it from me forever. To put it plainly, you're not denying any of what I've learned about your affair with Rob? Lauren felt the weight of David's accusations. Yes, those are the facts, but the reasons behind them matter. It was just sex, devoid of any emotional connection. It was an experiment, not driven by attraction or desire. The sex meant nothing to either of us. David struggled to comprehend Lauren's justification, wondering if she had lost her sense of reason or if these beliefs had always been part of her mindset. I'll give you that sliver of your explanation. It didn't sound like there was much passion between you. Exactly, David. There was no passion. It was just physical. I understand you're hurting, but I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. Wait a minute, it's still mostly nonsense. This whole "it was just sex" excuse doesn't hold up, and you know that. We made commitments to each other about fidelity from the very beginning. We talked about it before becoming exclusive, before marriage, during counseling, and even in our vows. Not once did we include an "it was just sex" loophole. Lauren realized arguing against their shared history was futile. David, you're correct. We did discuss fidelity extensively. What I'm trying to convey is that our love for each other hasn't changed. I've loved only you for the past 7+ years, and I never felt anything for Rob. If playing Yahtzee with Rob could have proved our point, we would have done that. It was just sex, but it was necessary to fulfill the secrecy of the affair. David felt like stupidity was to blame, and then he seized on Lauren's statement. So why didn't you just play Yahtzee? Or anything else? You claimed you didn't even want to have sex with Rob. And if secrecy was the goal, there were plenty of other ways to achieve that. You didn't have to have sex. You still had to hide your activities and cover for leaving work early. It's essentially the same thing. Lauren pondered David's challenge, feeling her defenses crumble. She couldn't find any solid justifications to counter his argument. Since their affair was meant to be kept secret, whether or not they actually had sex was inconsequential. To prove their point, they only needed to go through the motions of an affair, including the sneaking around and hotel meetings. So why did she go all the way? I don't know, David. I never considered the secrecy aspect in that light. We planned to have a secret affair to see if we could, and when it came down to it, we just assumed we'd go all the way. Lauren, all day you've been using just to downplay what you've done, as if it's no big deal. But what you did is incredibly damaging to our marriage. The fact that you failed to see that is possibly worse than the act itself. It almost seems like to you, it was just 5 times, so it doesn't matter. Well, it matters to me, and right now, we're not making any progress, so I'm leaving. David departed, heading back to the hotel. He called off work for Monday, wrestling with Lauren's justifications. He couldn't fathom how she could so easily discard their commitment for a meaningless wager with oblivious colleagues. It's all just a game to her, David concluded. I'm done trying to rationalize her actions. It wasn't just sex, it was a betrayal of her vows, her promise to be faithful until death do us part. Strangely, despite the weight of his decision, David felt a sense of relief, better than he had in a long time. The next day, Lauren eagerly agreed to meet again. What's this? She asked, flipping through the papers in the package. It's divorce papers, David replied simply. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel not to miss new videos.